Ask people today who won the Second World War, and most answers sound identical. America. The Soviet Union. Sometimes Britain is mentioned, but usually as a side note, the polite ally who helped, but didn't really decide the outcome. That version of history feels normal because it's been repeated for decades. But once you actually examine the timeline, the facts become deeply uncomfortable. Asterisk? Because there's one reality almost nobody talks about. Asterisk. Britain was the only major power that fought Nazi Germany from the first day of the war to the very last. Asterisk. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, Britain declared war immediately. No hesitation. No waiting. No conditions. And for the next 2 years, 2 full years, Britain stood alone against the most powerful military machine Europe had ever seen. Asterisk. The United States didn't enter the war until December 1941. The Soviet Union didn't fight. Germany until June 1941. And before that, it was actively cooperating with Hitler. Yet somehow, in the modern story of World War II, Britain has been pushed to the background, while America and the Soviet Union dominate the spotlight. Asterisk, that didn't happen by accident. Asterisk. Let's rewind to 1940. Asterisk, France collapsed in just 6 weeks. Belgium fell. The Netherlands surrendered. Denmark and Norway were overrun. One by one, Europe's strongest armies folded under the blitzkrieg. German commanders themselves were shocked by how quickly it all fell apart. Asterisk, by the summer of 1940, Britain stood completely alone. Asterisk, no allies on the continent. No second front. No backup force waiting to help. Just an island facing invasion from an enemy that had conquered nearly all of Europe. Asterisk, Hitler expected Britain to negotiate. Every strategic calculation said they should. The British army had barely escaped at Dunkirk, abandoning tanks, artillery, vehicles, almost everything. The Luftwaffe outnumbered the Royal Air Force. German submarines were preparing to starve the island into submission. Any rational nation would have asked for peace. Britain didn't. Asterisk, instead. Britain prepared to fight alone. Asterisk, what followed was the Battle of Britain, the first major defeat Nazi Germany ever suffered. The Luftwaffe expected to destroy British air power within weeks. They had crushed every other air force they had faced. Poland, France, Norway, none had lasted. Long Britain was different. Outnumbered pilots kept flying mission after mission. Radar stations warned of incoming raids. Ground crews repaired damaged aircraft overnight. Squadrons were rotated with ruthless efficiency. Germany lost planes faster than it could replace them. Asterisk, by October 1940, Hitler canceled the invasion of Britain. That moment changed the entire war for the first time. Nazi Germany had been stopped. Not delayed. Not slowed. Stopped. Britain didn't survive the Battle of Britain. It won it decisively. And yet today, that victory is often reduced to a short paragraph, while later battles get entire chapters. Asterisk, during those same months, Britain endured the Blitz. German bombs fell on London night after night for 8 straight months. Cities burned. Civilians slept in underground stations. Tens of thousands were killed. But Britain did not break. Asterisk, here's the part most textbooks quietly skip between 1940 and 1941. Britain was the only country actively fighting Nazi Germany. Asterisk, America was neutral, debating, watching, supplying equipment. Yes, but not fighting. Asterisk, the Soviet Union was doing something far worse. Stalin had signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler. Together, they carved up Poland. Soviet oil-powered German tanks. Soviet grain-fed German soldiers. For nearly 2 years, the Nazi war machine ran partially on Soviet resources. Asterisk, while Britain burned. Asterisk, and when modern history jumps from the fall of France straight to Pearl Harbor, those 2 years simply disappear, as if nothing important happened. As if Britain holding the line against the entire Axis war effort was just background noise. But those missing years were the foundation of everything that came later. Without Britain surviving 1940, there is no D-Day. No Western Front. No Allied invasion of Europe. No base from which American power could later operate. Asterisk. Britain didn't just fight alone. It kept the war alive. Asterisk. And it did far more than just survive. While Britain fought in the skies over southern England, it was also fighting a war that rarely gets mentioned at all, the Battle of the Atlantic. Asterisk. Ask yourself a simple question. How did the Allies keep fighting? Asterisk. How did food reach Britain? How did weapons reach the Soviet Union? How did American industry eventually reach European battlefields? Asterisk. The answer is ships. Thousands of them, crossing oceans filled with German submarines hunting day and night. Asterisk. If Britain lost the Atlantic.
Asterisk.
The war was over. Asterisk. Germany's strategy was clear. Starve Britain into surrender. U-boats sank merchant ships faster than they could be replaced. Tens of thousands of sailors froze to death in the Atlantic. Entire convoys vanished beneath the waves, and yet Britain held. The Royal Navy, the largest and most experienced navy in the world, adapted faster than Germany expected. New convoy systems, escort carriers, sonar, depth charges, and most importantly, intelligence, because Britain was reading German naval communications at Bletchley Park. British codebreakers cracked the Enigma machine, a breakthrough so powerful that historians estimate it shortened the war by at least 2 years. German U-boat positions were known in advance. Convoys were rerouted around wolf packs. Traps were laid. Asterisk. This wasn't a minor advantage. It was decisive. Asterisk. But for decades, the truth was classified. During that silence, popular culture filled the gap. Movies, books, simplified stories. Many credited American intelligence. Others didn't mention Enigma at all. Asterisk. By the time Britain could finally speak openly, the story had already hardened, and this pattern repeats again and again. British factories, operating under constant bombing, outproduced Germany in aircraft during 1940 and 1941. Before America entered the war, British radar technology transformed air defense. British scientists laid groundwork for later Allied innovations. Asterisk. Even the famous D-Day invasion rested heavily on British planning. Asterisk. The deception operation that fooled Hitler into expecting the invasion at Calais instead of Normandy. British intelligence. Fake armies. Double agents. Phantom radio traffic. One of the most successful deceptions in military history. Asterisk. It worked so well that German divisions waited weeks for an invasion that never came, while Allied troops established themselves in Normandy. Asterisk. That deception alone saved thousands of lives. Asterisk. Yet in most retellings, it barely exists. Asterisk. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Britain didn't lose the war. It lost control of the story. Asterisk. America emerged from World War II as a superpower. The Soviet Union emerged as another. Both needed narratives that justified their new dominance. Britain bankrupt, exhausted. Losing its empire didn't fit cleanly into either version. Asterisk. So Britain was softened, reduced, turned into a supporting character. Asterisk. Hollywood amplified American heroism. Soviet education erased the Western Front almost entirely. Between those two narratives, Britain faded, not because it didn't matter, but because neither side wanted it to matter. By the time Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy in June 1944, the outcome of the war was no longer a question of if only when, but the version of D-Day most people know today is dangerously incomplete. Over decades, repetition hardened myth into memory. Memory replaced fact. Asterisk. If you learned history from movies, you'd believe D-Day was almost entirely American. Omaha Beach dominates the screen. American soldiers, American sacrifice, American heroism. Britain appears briefly, if at all, as background support. Asterisk. That version is emotionally powerful. It's also misleading. Asterisk. The reality is that D-Day was a joint operation, and Britain was not a junior partner. 5 landing beaches were assaulted. 2 were American. 2 were British. One was Canadian. British and Canadian forces made up nearly half of the invasion troops. British naval vessels formed the backbone of the invasion fleet. British aircraft flew enormous numbers of sorties. The overall naval command was British. The deception operation that made the landings possible was British. The artificial mulberry harbors that kept supplies flowing? British innovation. Asterisk, even ground command on DDA was not purely American. General Montgomery commanded all Allied land forces during the invasion phase. British ports launched the Armada. British intelligence mapped German defenses. British planning shaped the logistics that made landing hundreds of thousands of men possible. Asterisk, yet over time, the day became simplified. One beach became the symbol. One nation became the hero. That simplification wasn't random. After World War II, the world entered a new conflict, the Cold War. And wars aren't just fought with weapons. They're fought with stories. Asterisk, the United States emerged from World War II as the most powerful economic and military force on Earth. The Soviet Union emerged as its ideological rival. Both needed a clean, heroic narrative of the past. And both narratives had a problem. Britain. If America acknowledged the full reality of the war, it would have to admit that Britain fought and resisted before America entered. That Britain held the line when everyone else fell. That America didn't arrive to save a helpless world. It joined an alliance that had already survived the worst. That didn't fit the image of the lone liberator. So American popular culture focused forward Pearl Harbor, Normandy, the Ardennes, the march into Germany. Everything before December 1941 became setup, not substance. Britain's lonely stand was reduced to background context, not center stage. The Soviet narrative went even further. In Soviet history, World War II began in June 1941. Everything before that vanished. The years when Stalin cooperated with Hitler disappeared. The Western Front became a sideshow. Britain's 2-year solo war effort was erased entirely. The story was simple. The Red Army bore the burden, suffered the most, and crushed Nazi Germany almost alone. That narrative spread across half the world. So here's what happened. America minimized Britain to elevate American heroism. The Soviet Union erased Britain to elevate Soviet sacrifice. Between those two versions, Britain didn't stand a chance. But the erasure didn't stop there. There was another trick, quieter, more subtle, but just as effective. The British Empire. At the start of World War II, Britain was not just an island nation. It was the center of a global empire. When Britain declared war, the Commonwealth followed. India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. African colonies, millions of men mobilized. Asterisk, Indian soldiers fought in North Africa. Italy and Burma. Canadians landed in Normandy and fought through northwest Europe. Australians held Tobruk and fought in the Pacific. New Zealanders fought in Greece and Italy. African regiments served across multiple theaters. Asterisk, these forces fought under British command. British planning, British logistics. Asterisk, but after the war, something strange happened. Asterisk, their contributions were separated. Asterisk, India's war effort became India's. Canada's became Canada's. Australia's became Australia's. Which is fair. These nations earned their recognition. But Britain's role was quietly reduced to only soldiers from the British Isles. Asterisk. So Britain's wartime strength was split into pieces, counted separately, minimized by modern political borders that didn't exist in 1940. Asterisk, meanwhile, Soviet history counted every soldier from every republic as one Soviet effort. American history counted every state and territory as one American effort. Britain alone was divided. The result? Britain appears smaller on paper than it actually was. Less powerful, less significant. Asterisk. This wasn't accidental. It was historical accounting that distorted reality, and here's the bitter irony. Britain allowed it. Why? Asterisk, because after the war, Britain was exhausted, victorious, but bankrupt. Cities destroyed. Economy shattered. Empire unraveling. India demanding independence. Colonies preparing to leave. Britain faced a choice: fight for historical recognition or secure survival. They chose survival. Britain needed American loans. American investment. The Marshall Plan. NATO protection against Soviet expansion. Challenging America's preferred narrative would have been politically disastrous. Asterisk so. Britain stayed quiet. Asterisk, no outrage over Hollywood movies. No correction campaigns against textbooks. No aggressive insistence on credit. Asterisk, add to that a deeply ingrained cultural trait. Understatement. Britain doesn't boast. Victory is endured, not celebrated. Achievement is downplayed. Keep calm and carry on wasn't propaganda, it was mindset. Asterisk, but in a world where memory is shaped by storytelling. Modesty is fatal. Asterisk, America told its story loudly. The Soviet Union told its story relentlessly. Britain told its story softly and eventually stopped telling it at all. Asterisk, so generation by generation. The truth faded. Asterisk, veterans died. Classrooms simplified. Movies replaced archives. And today, millions genuinely believe that Britain was a minor player in a war it fought from start to finish. Asterisk, misunderstanding matters. Asterisk, because when you erase Britain's role, you erase the real lessons of World War II. Asterisk, you erase the lesson that wars are not won only by size. Britain survived because it adapted faster, innovated smarter, and refused to surrender when logic said it should. Asterisk, you erase the lesson that intelligence can matter more than numbers. Enigma, radar, deception, these weren't side details. They shaped the entire conflict. Asterisk, you erase the lesson that alliances win wars, not lone giants. D-Day succeeded because it was joint. The Atlantic was held because Britain and America worked together. Victory came from coordination, not isolation. Asterisk, and most of all, you erase the human cost. Asterisk, the civilians who lived through years of bombing. The sailors who froze in Atlantic waters. The pilots who flew until exhaustion killed them. The workers who built aircraft while bombs fell around them. The Commonwealth soldiers who fought far from home under a flag not their own. Asterisk. They don't deserve to be footnotes. Asterisk, Britain didn't win World War II alone. No nation did, but Britain was indispensable. It stood when others fell. It fought when others waited. It endured when surrender seemed inevitable.